Aloha and welcome to Java with me. It's Monday, August 14th, 2023. Thank you everyone for being here. And I really appreciate some of the advice that I've been getting and the comments. It has helped me, I think, tremendously. And I've got you all to thank for that. So, with that, it is Monday. We're not expecting an awful lot of news to come out other than in consumer inflation expectations for July. So, it will be a relatively quiet day, I think, on these market fronts. So we are going green and risk, as we see in the indicator, is high. We are firmly above that 260 level, 265.7 currently, as I'm doing this. And they're saying that recession worries are fading. And so this is kind of the narrative that is going across. But this recession that is coming will be a consumer led recession, meaning that they're crushing them out from their spending. And we're starting to get signs of that. So, as Greg sent out in a newsletter, we've got the three notable ones are credit card delinquency. So, you can say, well, our economy is still growing and they're still using their credit cards. But the flip side is that there are delinquency rates. So, if we truly were stronger, people would still be paying their credit cards in anticipation that they would be continuing to use them. So, that's kind of like a counter fact there to that argument. We've also got the number of Americans making emergency withdrawals from 401k plans. They take huge hits on that. So, because that is surging, that's another indicator for me of the reality that the consumer is not so strong. And then the other report we got is that 69% of US consumers in urban areas are currently living paycheck to paycheck, meaning if they get fired, they have an issue with that, they're going to be homeless on the streets. So, going beyond our markets, we'll be watching that. We've got some news. China is showing weakness. They missed some major payments. And this is an issue because it can be systemic. It could work like dominoes, basically, and falling into other sections of their economy in a major way. So, with this, they set up a task force. And this is kind of on top of the whole country gardens developer defaults that they are looking at lower loans, imploding, they are printing less money. They're speculating that they will be doing stimulus, but they haven't announced anything yet because it would devalue their currency more. So back home, we've got a story regarding commodities. US Steel, this commodity sector, they got multiple unsolicited bids for purchase. So this is making them step back and say, hold on, we realize we've got some value. A lot of the larger money is starting to come into commodities as they're looking to deleverage on their risk. And that means basically, in a very simple form, they're selling out of stocks because they're expecting that break will be happening soon and going to more stable items, which would be commodities, steel, gold, copper, oil. So we will watch that going forward. It is an election cycle or selection cycle. So with this is the counterpoint to the Federal Reserve's hikes. So as they're bringing the economy down, they've basically got several different methods that they're continuing to throw out stimulus or at least continue to spend, which is massively inflationary. And the irony of this is that they are touting their Inflation Reduction Act. So they're trying to spend their way out of inflation. And the only way that that works, it's kind of like surfing. They're trying to stay ahead of it, ahead of that wave, but they keep printing that money and trying to do it at a faster pace than what inflation is catching up with them. And they're only able to do this because of some of the other downward pressure news that is keeping it in check. So he's got Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen touring with him. And this is kind of unprecedented, but at any rate, just something to keep an eye on because they are the balance, if you will, for this temporary soft landing that we are talking about. Speaking of soft landings on central banks, there was a while back, not too long ago, when Jerome Powell insisted that central banks do not collaborate. They talk all the time, but he insists they do not collaborate. So I would like to get your opinion on this. On these three stories, these are all recent, it all came out basically together. The first one, European Central Bank, or ECB, as we lovingly call them, they are still delivering one last hike in September. So this is saying, further down in the story, they let it out that they're expecting like basically 25 points. This was a separate article, but it is going right along this with this one. And when Greg talks about the stuff that is in our face, this is part of what he means. They haven't even changed the language. The ECB has engineered a quote unquote soft landing. That was coined by the Federal Reserve. So now they're using it, talking about what geniuses they are for having engineered this soft landing. Second one, Swiss National Bank. Expected to hike again even as inflation is seen slowing. Look at these numbers. Bloomberg survey forecast 25 basis point move in September. So this is the expectations. It doesn't mean that they're going to, but this is because they are all moving in lockstep, keeping their currencies relatively in step with each other so that the economies don't crumble one another. Third one, Bank of England. Again, they're pointing to one or two more quarter point increases. Same increase, same period of time. I am going to bet it's going to be September. So they are keeping these all together kind of, as I said, in lockstep so that they can kind of keep control on their luck. We've got the BRICS bloc is expected to meet next 22nd of August next week. And that's going to be some interesting news. We'll look forward to that. So I want to bring up, if you are a central banker and you don't play exactly with the way that they have things planned out, they sanction you. But this is basically a slap on the wrist. So they're saying the US and the UK, they didn't mention, but Canada did as well, sanction the Lebanese central banker days after he leaves his job. So if you're not aware, in the Lebanese currency just completely deflated, collapsed, and I had some tremendous chaos over there because of it. Basically, their hyperinflation had no value left. So they slapped this guy on the wrist, let him go. And this is basically where all of the central bankers eventually are heading. Not anytime too soon, but we are going to watch one currency fall after another. The next one, they're talking about Egypt, and there's a few others. So there are ways around this. I have been looking at a couple of that have chosen alternatives, particularly digital currencies. And one last note on this is with this inflation, this can potentially create the crisis to where everybody calls for either the revaluation or when they bring in the central bank digital currency with the universal basic income. This is a huge deal. So with that, I'm going to leave you all off to the markets. I'm wishing you all a green day or just a wonderful day in general. And until I see you again, my friends, stay free.